Linda Evans, the embodiment of elegance and grace in the 1980s, was the woman who breathed life into Crystal Carrington and became the very definition of glamorous beauty on primetime television. Week after week, her image reigned in America's living rooms, radiating a calm composure and an unmatched charisma. But is everything we saw on screen truly the whole truth? Behind that radiant smile lies a heart that has endured fierce storms, broken marriages, bitter betrayals, and long years of battling illness, both physical and emotional. Now, at the age of 82, she lives a quiet life, filled with empty spaces, where the shadows of the past seem unwilling to ever let her go. In this video, you will witness a tear-stained journey, the silent sorrows that have worn down the strength of a remarkably resilient woman. A woman who still keeps moving forward, even as her heart bears wounds that have never closed. This is a story never before told, where beauty, fame, and sorrow intertwine to create a tragedy hauntingly beautiful. It's heartbreaking to think that one of television's most graceful icons once lived in near silence, convinced she had nothing worth sharing. No one could have imagined that the quiet little girl who lowered her eyes and clutched her books tightly while drifting behind her classmates would one day become one of television's most admired legends, cherished across the world, but once just a shadow of herself. Linda Evans was born in November 1942 in Hartford, Connecticut, the middle daughter of 3 girls in a home steeped in music and movement. Her parents, both professional dancers, filled the house with rhythm, elegance, and tireless rehearsals. It was a world of spotlight, posture, and poise, a world that celebrated presence. But in that very space, Linda felt like the quiet note no one heard. She was not simply a quiet child. She was a spirit tucked behind curtains, observing life like a spectator at a show she didn't know how to join. While her sisters moved with ease, laughing and basking in the energy of the home, Linda recoiled from it all, overwhelmed by a brightness she couldn't match. She watched, silently, as the world celebrated extroversion, loudness, and charm, none of which she believed she possessed. Her silence wasn't a phase. It was armor. From the outside, it was a happy home. But inside Linda's heart, there lived a persistent ache, an invisible loneliness that had no name. She often felt like a ghost drifting through the halls of her own childhood. Even when surrounded by love, she remained untouched, because love alone cannot replace understanding. And what Linda needed most wasn't attention. It was someone to see the quiet girl behind the smile and ask, "Are you okay?" When she was just 6 months old, the family moved to California and eventually found themselves in the heart of Hollywood, a city bursting with promise and projection. For a family of performers, it was the Golden Gate. For Linda, it felt like exile. While her sisters adapted to the sun-drenched sidewalks and endless energy, Linda folded into herself. The bright lights didn't beckon her. They blinded her. She wandered through school corridors like a whisper, barely noticed, rarely remembered. Teachers described her as polite, reserved, sweet. But beneath those words was a child drowning in silence, pleading to be understood in a world that only applauded noise. Her childhood wasn't filled with tragedy as the world defines it. No physical pain, no abuse, no loss of home. But the suffering was real and constant. She felt unseen in a house of mirrors, unheard in rooms full of music. She didn't act out. She disappeared. Day by day, she erased herself so that the world wouldn't have to. The deepest wounds don't leave bruises. They leave questions. And Linda's question was always the same. What's wrong with me? That quiet agony would follow her for years. Then came a moment so small it could have been missed. Hollywood high school, a teacher, and a suggestion. Join drama class, not to perform, just to try. Linda didn't go in dreaming of applause. She went in desperate to learn how to stand still without feeling like she was falling apart. What she found on that stage was not escape. It was revelation. For the first time in her life, she could say what she meant without trembling. The stage didn't ask her to compete with her sisters. It didn't ask her to be louder, bolder, flashier. It simply offered space. And for a girl who had spent a lifetime apologizing for taking up that was everything. I remember thinking, maybe I don't need to disappear after all, Linda later recalled. Acting didn't turn her into someone else. It allowed her to be herself without fear. Each role was not a mask, but a mirror, showing her that there was strength in stillness and beauty in depth. She didn't need to shine like others. She only needed to be real. And real was enough. In the silence between lines, in the breath before a scene, Linda found the sound of her own voice. Steady, gentle, unshakable. The world hadn't changed, but she had. And in that quiet transformation, the seeds of a future legend were planted. Not with fanfare, but with the soft, defiant choice to stop hiding. From that moment forward, her story began. Not the story of stardom, but of survival. Not the story of perfection, but of presence. A journey born from the pain of invisibility and the miracle of finally being seen. From the shadows of her silent childhood years, where Linda Evans was once the little girl who always kept her head down in the schoolyard, retreating into her own world of quiet doubts, she stepped into life like a fledgling bird that hadn't yet learned how to fly in the dazzling yet cold sky of Hollywood. No one could have imagined that the very girl who once drowned in silence would choose to set foot in a world that leaves no room for timidity. A world where the limelight can lift a person to the peak of glory, yet is cruel enough to burn fragile souls to ashes. And it was in that very place that the most painful journey, also the most extraordinary, began in silence. Linda Evans, a name that, when mentioned, evokes not only the elegant, mesmerizing beauty of the 1980s, but also the fierce journey of a woman who overcame everything. From insecurity and quiet pain to the unattainable summit of fame and splendor. Renowned worldwide for her role as Crystal Carrington in the television phenomenon Dynasty, Linda left a lasting mark not only with her gentle grace and quiet strength, but with the image of a woman who seemed delicate yet was, in truth, an inviolable fortress of emotion, etched deeply into the memory of an entire generation. But behind that radiant stage light was a rocky path paved with sacrifice, endurance, and moments of collapse too heavy for words, where tears were the only thing left to hold onto courage. Linda arrived in Hollywood not with dazzling confidence or a conquering spirit, but as a young girl with a soft, kind face, a vague artist's soul, and a shyness so consuming that she had to fight every day just to keep from drowning in her own fear of the stage. And it was precisely because of that her path to growth became so unique. Because every small step forward was traded for effort, tears, and harsh lessons that only time and suffering could teach. The early days of Linda's career were brutally unforgiving. No mentor, no open doors, not a single big break. All she had was determination and a string of anonymous roles in shows like Bachelor Father, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, and Wagon Train. Nameless characters who appeared briefly and vanished, accompanied by skeptical glances from colleagues and the torment of her own self-doubt. It was as if the world's coldest game had set her up for one relentless test after another. But the turning point came when Linda decided to study acting at Hollywood High School, a place where she shattered her shell of fear scene by scene, breath by breath, through relentless practice on stage, until, from a place she never thought she could reach, passion ignited and shattered her cocoon of timidity, transforming Linda into something else. Stronger, more proactive, more ready to face the harsh world outside. The role of Audra Barkley in The Big Valley was the first door to open a whole new horizon for Linda. No longer the timid girl of yesterday, she transformed into a fierce, emotionally intense young woman of the American West. Acting alongside the legendary Barbara Stanwyck, whom she called the greatest teacher of my life. Linda not only learned how to act, but learned what it meant to devote herself to art with heart, professionalism, and total dedication. That role didn't just bring Linda into the light, it laid the unshakable foundation for a career the entire world would one day bow to. But just as her career began to bloom, a storm struck. This time from the very sanctuary of her private life. In 1965, Linda met John Derek, an acclaimed director twice divorced and renowned in Hollywood, while Linda herself was just a rising starlet, innocent, yearning to be loved. He offered her safety, gentleness, and love that felt eternal. Quickly, they became Hollywood's dream couple, marrying in 1968 and hailed as the epitome of a perfect union. A talented director and a graceful, flawless actress, Linda believed she was living the dream. Loved, celebrated, sharing her life and career with an equal partner. Yet that dream turned out to be a gilded cage, radiant yet frigid, beautiful yet hollow. Behind closed doors, John became controlling. Linda, the woman who once held her own dreams and burned with ambition, was pushed into the shadows, becoming the silent wife. She turned down roles, abandoned promising projects, declined coveted invitations, all to appease the man she loved so much she forgot herself. And with each endless sacrifice, Linda began to lose herself. Not the ambitious woman she once was, but a pale ghost, paling to the point of haunting. A fate far more terrifying than loneliness, to feel forgotten within one's own life. Each day became a worn-out replica of the last, devoid of emotion, color, or inner voice. Then came the cruelest blow. John fell for another woman, Bo Derek, who was only 16. This scandal not only rocked the media, but struck Linda with a mortal blow. She lost not only the man she loved, but became the subject of public pity and scorn. Once revered as the ideal wife, she was now plunged to the depths of humiliation and despair, with no anchor to hold on to, and every morning a mental battle just to convince herself to go on. Some nights, she would collapse in her dark room on tear-soaked pillows, not because of sorrow, but from emotional numbness so profound she couldn't feel anymore. She once cried out, "There was a time I didn't know if I had the strength to keep living." That confession transcended her alone. It became the sob of millions of women who have lost, broken, and then learned to walk again with shattered hearts. This pain didn't explode like a storm. It bled silently like a lingering wound, gnawing at Linda day by day, memory by memory, belief by belief, until nothing remained but a solitary woman standing among the ashes of her own life. Linda Evans, the woman who once walked proudly in the glow of fame, had faced the point where she had to kneel in sorrow, not because she gave in, but because her heart hurt too much to stand any longer. Linda refused to let pain redefine her. Though her heart had shattered and she walked away from marriage with wounds still raw, she didn't collapse. She didn't numb the ache or fake resilience. She chose to feel it fully, then slowly, piece by piece, rebuild herself. And just when no one expected, life opened a door, not to erase sorrow, but to transform it into legacy. In 1981, she became Crystal Carrington in Dynasty, ABC's bold answer to Dallas. That role was more than a comeback. It was fate. Crystal, the gentle but unwavering woman, mirrored Linda's own strength. Like Crystal, she had loved deeply, forgiven too often, hidden pain to preserve peace, and finally let go in tears. She knew betrayal, silence, and the loneliness of glittering rooms. That's why she didn't act Crystal. She became her. Every glance, every pause, every soft-spoken word came from a soul that had known sorrow and still stood tall. Because of that, Dynasty became a global phenomenon. Linda won the 1982 Golden Globe, earned 6 total nominations, and most of all, touched millions. But behind the sequins and acclaim, What she truly reclaimed was herself. Not someone's wife or shadow, but Linda Evans, a woman who faced heartbreak and chose to write her own ending. After leaving Dynasty in 1989, she rarely returned to screens, but each time she did, The Last Frontier, 1996, Hell's Kitchen, 2009, or Celebrity Showdown, 2011, it felt like a quiet whisper. I'm still here, still me. She wasn't chasing fame, just peace. And that calm, that quiet dignity, made her shine brighter than ever. Linda became a symbol for countless women. We can fall, lose everything, and still rise, wiser, stronger, freer. From a timid girl behind a man to an icon who rose from ashes, Linda Evans stands as proof that some spirits cannot be broken. Not just a Hollywood legend, but a beacon for all who've been wounded and still dare to love life again. Following the radiant spotlight of her celebrated television career, where Linda Evans stood as an irreplaceable icon with her portrayal of Crystal Carrington in Dynasty, one might have expected her days after applause and adoration to unfold into a calm, fulfilling life. But life offered no such gentleness. Instead, it arranged for her agonizing pain, unannounced collapses, and shadows that not a single stage light could reach. And yet, amidst all of that, Linda refused to allow pain to redraw her life's portrait. She chose to face it, chose to rise, even when merely continuing to live hurt more than letting go. When her marriage fractured, Linda didn't just lose a man, she lost herself, the once whole, vibrant version of her who believed that love could save everything. That breakdown wasn't simply the end of a relationship. It was a spiritual earthquake that swept away confidence, identity, and even the sense of belonging. The more she tried to move on, the more she felt enveloped by a formless ache. An ache that was not ordinary sadness, but a quiet, bone-deep gnawing like a cold wind through her spine. No longer just emotional sorrow, but a chronic physical agony that made every step, every sit-down, and every stand-up its own daily battle. The bodily pain tore apart every cell, and the emotional torment, far sharper, left Linda exhausted repeatedly, unsure how much longer she could endure. Her once lustrous hair, a symbol of timeless beauty, began shedding due to cortisone side effects. And with each strand that fell went a fragment of her courage, a fragment of her pride. Linda didn't cry for her fading appearance. She cried for the gradual disappearance of her true self, bit by silent bit. It was as if both body and soul were decaying at once. In 2014, another incident thrust Linda Evans back into headlines. Not for a dazzling acting role or grand comeback, but because of a dashboard camera recording from a police car. In that clip, Linda was pulled over while driving erratically, drifting across lanes near her home in Washington state. When she stepped out of the vehicle, her gait faltered, voice slurred, eyes vacant. The car sped away like it carried an entire legacy of starlight. And no one called cut. There was no script to fix mistakes, no lights, no stage, just an unscripted life where every misstep was punished by public shame. That image instantly ignited a firestorm of judgment. Tabloids descended like a pack of hungry beasts, and social media exploded. They quickly labeled her a fallen star. Nobody asked what she was fighting for. Nobody noticed the pain pills found in her car. Not substances meant for intoxication, but the only thing that eased the chronic pain from a slipped disc she suffered for years. Linda was not unconscious, but that collision felt like a strike to both body and spirit. She remained alert when police arrived, but what followed was more painful than any visible injury. No compassion, no comforting hand, only prying gazes and cold gossip that felt like a trial without a court. Alone amidst a furious public, Linda understood that the pain in her spine was only the surface. The deeper agony, the true thing that could topple someone, was the pain inside. Could I still get through this? Linda asked herself at the bottom of that chasm of suffering. but she refused to let pain, whether physical or emotional, define the rest of her life. She didn't rebut or justify. Linda chose to heal in silence. Each morning she awoke, inhaled slowly, practiced yoga in the early light, ate nutritious meals, and persevered in rebuilding herself. 4 laser surgeries healed her damaged back. Her hair regrew after stress-induced fallout, and the light in her eyes, once dimmed, gradually returned. Every morning I say, "Thank God I'm well again." Linda choked on tears. Only when we lose something do we understand the true value of what we once took for granted. Linda didn't chase old glory. She found a new version of herself, imperfect yet genuine, scarred yet luminous. She no longer lived to be praised. She lived to tell her story. The story of a woman who fell to her lowest and stood back up, not to return to where she once shone, but to live fully with the deepest part of herself. Linda Evans is no longer merely a star. She's a symbol of rebirth. She stands as proof that some wounds are unseen, but if we dare to face them, they can transform into strength. Her story is not merely one of survival. It is an epic anthem for souls once shattered, yet still brave enough to press on. After all the brilliant glories and fierce storms, after life relentlessly tested her and she silently stitched back her invisible wounds, Linda Evans, at the age of 82, no longer needs the spotlight to prove anything. She has left Hollywood, left behind the flashbulbs and fleeting applause, to live among silent nature in Washington State, in a cozy wooden home nestled amid ancient pines. There, the wind whispers through the branches. Morning mist settles on the path, and the pace of life slows enough for one to truly hear their inner voice. Linda lives alone. No husband, no children, no noise, no rat race. Just a few lifelong friends who visit in turns, help tend her garden or share afternoon tea. Her home isn't luxurious, but she calls it a small paradise, holding both past and present, full of keepsakes, old letters, and faded black and white photos. Her property may be valued at over $2 million, but that no longer means much to someone who has relinquished all fame like she has. She once said, "I won't carry anything out of this world except the things I have forgiven and the love I leave behind." That's why she made her will early, so everything goes where it belongs, most to charities and a few trusted friends. After years battling chronic fatigue syndrome, joint pain, osteoporosis, and back pain that shredded her mind as much as her body, Linda stopped pushing herself. She learned to listen to her body, let go of what she couldn't bear, and realize true strength lies not in how much you endure, but in how much you dare release to live fully with what remains. Her current lifestyle is gentle and mindful. She eats a semi-vegetarian diet prioritizing organic vegetables, drinks plenty of water, avoids sugar and red meat. She begins each day with meditation and gentle yoga, then strolls through her garden, where she grows lavender, mint, and climbing roses that bloom like youthful memories that haven't faded. Though no longer youthful as in Dynasty, Linda Evans at 82 still possesses elegance and a magnetic aura. Her long silver hair is neatly tucked behind her ears. Her skin bears age spots, but her eyes remain bright, a light only found in those who have passed through pain without losing faith. She cares for herself not with cosmetic surgery, but with acceptance, with full nights of sleep, kind thoughts, and unconditional self-love. Today, she rarely appears in public, only accepting invitations to memorial events for former colleagues or intimate interviews sharing her inner life, no longer a figure of the crowd. Her artistic career is almost closed, with her final project being a small role in a Hollywood history documentary over 5 years ago. Since then, she has retreated quietly, peacefully, like a leaf that's completed its season, ready to fall without regret. Linda never had children, but she's far from lonely. She's surrounded by a close circle, not because of the renown. Evans' name, but because of the warmth of her heart. Their silent yet unwavering presence carried her through the coldest winters of her life. Winters with no snow, but bone-deep chill. Even in rare interviews or calm appearances, Linda remains a quiet source of inspiration. Not through glamour, but through the gentle strength of a woman who once shattered, once bewildered, once lost her way, but then journeyed far enough to understand. Truth, healing, happiness are not found in applause, but in facing oneself with honesty. Linda Evans is no longer anyone's shadow, nor a scripted character. She is herself, an experienced soul living each day with gratitude and the calm she has earned after such a long journey. She has nothing left to prove, no need to shine, yet remains a silent role model for those learning to forgive their past and accept who they've become.